Good afternoon. The first item of business this afternoon is Scottish Parliamentary Corporate Body Question Time, and at question number 1 I call Paul Sweeney.
You, Deputy Presiding Officer, to ask the Scottish Parliamentary Corporate Body further to the answer to my previous written question, what is position on whether MSPs should be able to participate in the Armed Forces Parliamentary Scheme in addition to the Armed Forces Visits Programme, should they wish to do so in light of it being a structured 15-day course with one of the armed services and it also offering the opportunity to enrol in a Royal College of Defence Studies postgraduate degree level course in strategic leadership and international strategic studies, and therefore being different in nature.
Johnson Carlo.
Can I thank Paul Sweeney for his sustained and continued interest in these matters. As a member, he's obviously aware the Scottish Parliament's Armed Forces Parliamentary Visits Programme was established actually relatively recently in 2017. Since then, many members, including myself, have participated in outward visits to defence bases across Scotland, as well as reciprocal visits to the Parliament. And I say this as an enthusiastic former member of the CCF myself. The current programme is a good fit for the Scottish Parliament and members, and whilst there are no plans to review this at the current time, Mr Sweeney has highlighted some differences between the two schemes. Accordingly, the corporate body has asked parliamentary officials to contact the Armed Forces Parliamentary Scheme to inquire whether members of the Scottish Parliament may participate in these programmes, and we will update Mr Sweeney and members accordingly in due course.
Paul Sweeney.
I welcome the response in relation to exploring this idea with the Armed Forces Parliamentary Trust. I think that it would be welcome that members of the Scottish Parliament and other devolved legislatures were able to participate in the programme, given it is governed by an independent board of trustees and funded largely from industry, so it wouldn't necessarily come at any cost to the Scottish Parliament, and therefore would give opportunity for members to augment the existing excellent and well-attended visits programme that I've also had an opportunity to attend, with a deeper engagement with our armed forces.
Jackson Carlo.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that, but I think in the first instance what I and the corporate body would very much encourage is more members of this Parliament to actually participate in the scheme that we do have, which is the Armed Forces Parliamentary Visits Programme. And members will be aware there's been a recent communication the last couple of days that has gone out, identifying opportunities that will be available later this year. And too few MSPs, I think, have participated in these, and I would very much encourage others to do so, because it really is a great experience.
And brief supplementary, Rachel Hamilton.
Sorry, Presiding Officer, I pressed my button as I have a question. Thank you, because you were looking at me.
OK, thank you for that clarification, Ms Hamilton. I'll try to avoid doing that too much in the future. Question number 2, Patrick Harvey.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the corporate body whether it will consider removing from its catering outlets any products made by companies identified by the UN Human Rights Office as being involved in activities related to illegal Israeli settlements in the occupied Palestinian territory.
Claire Baker.
Thank you. The catering services at Scottish Parliament are provided through our service partner Sodexo Limited. Sodexo has been monitoring any supply requirements, and they have no original sources or suppliers within occupied Palestinian territory. I understand that Sodexo continuously review their supply chain, working with supply chain partners to understand risk and challenges related to issues such as international conflict, political instability and logistics.
Patrick Harvey.
I'm grateful for the answer, and I take on trust the assurance that there are no specific products produced in the occupied territories. However, I think there are products produced by companies which are complicit in activity in the occupied territories. I think all of us would be rightly horrified if there were products on sale that were profiting companies that were benefiting from the illegal Russian occupation of Ukraine, and it seems to me that exactly the same principle should apply in relation to companies that are complicit in the Israeli occupation of Palestine. So can I urge the corporate body to consider more deeply this question, and whether we can have a stronger position agreed with catering partners to ensure that such companies are not profiting from custom of either staff members or visitors to the Parliament.
Claire Baker.
I thank the member for the further question. It is important that the corporate body operates within the legal framework, and we do ensure that through the Scottish procurement policy all our contractors comply with all legal requirements, and they do adhere to the UK Government's embargoes and sanctions list, which was updated in October last year. But I do hear the member's concerns, and the member may be interested to know that our catering contract is due for renewal, and it will be out to tender soon.
And brief supplementary, Stephen Kerr.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. Isn't this just another example of Patrick Harvey's student union-style obsessive politics? I mean, shouldn't the parliamentary catering continue to focus on delivering good service, value for money, especially in the eyes of the taxpayer?
Claire Baker.
I do recognise the two members in the chamber have different views on some important issues. I would say again that our catering service meets all its legal requirements, and we will be opening it up to tender quite soon.
Question number 3, John Mason.
Thank you. To ask the Scottish Parliament corporate body what information it has on what reason stamps that are issued in the Parliament's Post Office are not Scotland country definitive stamps by default.
Claire Baker.
Thank you. The corporate body is not responsible for the commercial decisions of the on-site post office. My understanding is that it stocks the standard range of postage stamps that would be available in all high street post offices to cater for customers' everyday mailing needs. They have confirmed to us that country definitive postage stamps are available to purchase, and on checking at the post office this morning, I found out they do have 300 first-class Scottish stamps, and more can be ordered on request, which would take 1 to 2 days.
John Mason.
I thank the member for that answer, and I accept the point that it's the same in post offices outside of here. But the Royal Mail has gone to considerable effort under pressure to produce what I think are excellent first and second class stamps for Scotland. This is Scotland's national parliament, and we sell stamps for the rest of the UK. Does she not agree that's bizarre?
Claire Baker.
As I said, the post office does make its own commercial stamps, and the other stamps are available on request, a whole range of stamps, including Scotland-specific stamps. They do currently have Scottish-specific first-class stamps in stock, and they'd be happy, at a member's request, to order a fuller range of stamps. And that includes a full range of stamps. I do understand they include country definitive stamps, but also you can get Spice Girls stamps and ACD stamps at the moment.
Question number 4, Mark Roscoe.
Thank you, and can I declare an interest as a former trustee of the Scottish Parliamentary Pension Scheme? To ask the Scottish Parliament corporate body what discussions it has had with the Scottish Parliament Pension Scheme trustees about investments in Tesla and any other companies that may conflict with the scheme's statement of investment principles.
Maggie Chapman.
I thank Mark Ruskell for that question. While his specific point is one for the trustees of the Scottish Parliamentary Pension Scheme and not the corporate body, I can advise that the SPCB's duty, in accordance with the provisions of the Scottish Parliamentary Pensions Act 2009, is to nominate trustees to administer the pension scheme and manage its assets. Trustees are appointed by the Parliament on the passing of a resolution to approve their nomination. They perform an important role, ensuring the proper running of the scheme. They operate separately to the corporate body, holding scheme assets in trust for scheme beneficiaries. They must fulfil fiduciary duties, including acting impartially, prudently, responsibly and in the best interests of scheme beneficiaries. The trustees act in accordance with their investment strategy, keeping the corporate body informed of changes as required. The corporate body does not expect the trustees to notify it of the investment decisions of its fund managers.
Mark Ruskell.
Well, can I thank Maggie Chapman for that answer? I mean, it is quite clear that Elon Musk has promoted extremism, misinformation. He's part of a Trump administration which has shown utter contempt for human rights across the world. He is a toxic individual, and that's just one of the reasons why the value of shares in Tesla is collapsing right now, which of course will be impacting on our pensions as well. So I welcome the news that Baillie Gifford, who run our pension funds, have been reducing the amount of funds in Tesla. I would like to see total divestment from Elon Musk's companies as well. But will the member just reflect on the fact that the SPPS is now conducting, in March this year, its triennial review, and the SPCB as an employer perhaps could and should encourage all members of this scheme to give feedback on these kind of ethical issues in relation to the ethical investment policy, which is an important part of the governance of our collective pension funds.
Maggie Chapman.
Can I thank Mark Ruskell for that follow-up question? And as he knows, I'm pleased too that there is that triennial review underway imminently. As he will be aware, as a former scheme trustee, it's the main duty of trustees to act in the financial interests of the scheme beneficiaries. But I think it is also important that we are clear that the fiduciary duties of the scheme are taken clearly into advice, and Baillie Gifford, I'm sure, will be taking note of the changing circumstances of Tesla valuations. I think that one last point to make, I think something that is quite clear In previous sessions, I'm aware that the pension scheme met with corporate body on a more regular basis. That has not been the routine this session, but I undertake to take back to corporate body that request or that intention, whether we decide to take that forward and ensure that there is consultation with scheme members. That is something that corporate body will discuss, and we will get back to the member in due course.
Brief supplementary, Brian Whittam.
Thank you very much, Deputy Presiding Officer. Once again, an illustration of student politics. And I wonder if the member would agree with me that if we extrapolated what the member asks here, we would actually need to then look at all the supply chain that supplied any manufacturers or any investment, and that would be an impossible task.
Maggie Chapman.
I think I gave a pretty full answer in my response to Mark Ruskell, but it's clear that the fiduciary duties of the scheme trustees are taken very, very seriously, and actually supply chain considerations are part of those considerations that they take into account. So, as I've said before, we will have further discussions about this, about how we best consult with members of the scheme at corporate body, whether that's our responsibility and part of our role or not, and we will come back to Parliament.
Question number 5, Ariane Burgess.
To ask the Scottish Parliamentary Corporate Body what measures it is taking to support any LGBTQ+ staff whose welfare may be negatively impacted by any increase in the use of language in the Chamber and committees that may be perceived as trans-exclusionary.
Jackson Carlo.
The corporate body takes its duties under health and safety legislation very seriously and has a range of measures in place which promote good mental health and well-being for all staff. This includes regular discussions between managers and staff, during which welfare concerns can be discussed and resolved. Staff can also access the confidential and free employee assistance programme, which provides a wide range of support, including access to counselling. The corporate body opposes all forms of unlawful discrimination and will take a zero-tolerance approach and take appropriate action against any individual displaying such behaviour. As part of this, staff can access an independent support service, including advocacy support, to help them to address any concerns and seek an appropriate resolution. The corporate body's commitment to all of its staff, including LGBTQ+ staff, is long-standing and is non-negotiable.
Ariane Burgess.
Deputy Presiding Officer, according to the last census, trans people made up less than 0.5% of Scotland's population. Yet just this year, their right to access public services, seek support following rape or abuse, work in the public sector, serve on public bodies, to even be mentioned in schools, in short, to merely exist in the public realm at all, has been challenged on no fewer than 10 separate occasions in this Parliament. And we have a duty of care to all who work in the building. Would these completely disproportionate attacks on a group with a characteristic protected under the Equalities Act be tolerated for any other marginalised group?
Jackson Carlo.
Well, I think I would refer the member to the response I gave a moment ago, which is the corporate body's response and attitude to these issues. Insofar as the member may be referring to language or other incidents to which she referred, these are actually within the Chamber or within a committee. That's not actually a matter within the responsibility of the corporate body. The Parliament's standing orders set out that members shall at all times conduct themselves in a courteous and respectful manner and shall respect the authority of the presiding officer or, in the case of committee meetings, the convener.
And question number 6, Rachel Hamilton.
To ask the Scottish Parliamentary Corporate Body what recent assessment it has made of the resources given to the legislation team.
Maggie Chapman.
I thank Rachel Hamilton for her question. A comprehensive review of the staffing resource required for Session 6 was undertaken in 2021. As a result of this review, additional staff were brought on stream in 22-23 across the clerking function, including within the legislation team. A flexible resourcing model is operated across the clerking teams, which enables the movement of staff across functions to support peaks in parliamentary business throughout the session. Senior leaders within the Parliamentary Business Directorate continually assess and reprioritise staff resources to ensure the effective delivery of business. Additional resources are being allocated to the legislation team in the forthcoming weeks, increasing its staffing complement until the end of the session.
Rachel Hamilton.
I thank Maggie Chapman for that answer, and I'm pleased to hear that there are additional resources being allocated to the legislation team in the next few weeks. But there has been, if I may say, a noticeable decline in the standard of bills presented by the Scottish Government. Presiding Officer, the legislation team play a really important role in supporting members of the Scottish Parliament. However, the poor standard of bills from the Scottish Government is resulting in an increased need for significant and complex amendments, which is causing delays in the parliamentary process. Does the Scottish Parliamentary Corporate Body share my concerns about the quality of the bills being introduced by the Scottish Government, which is having an impact on the parliamentary resources and the welfare of the staff here?
Maggie Chapman.
I thank Rachel Hamilton for her supplementary question. Whilst we acknowledge within Corporate Body that there have been a number of bills subject to delays during the scrutiny process this session for a variety of reasons, none of these relate to actual resourcing of the legislation team itself. Legislation team officials work with their Scottish Government counterparts via established routes to ensure that business is prioritised and programmed appropriately to avoid pinch points wherever possible. Now, I appreciate that that doesn't address the member's question in full, but it is not the corporate body role to take a view on the quality of bills, as she suggests, that come to Parliament from the Scottish Government.
Thank you, Ms Chapman. That concludes Scottish Parliamentary Corporate Body question time. There will be a very short pause before we move on to the next item of business to allow front bench teams to quickly change position. Thank you.